Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm here with Angel, or better known as Passive Income Angel on TikTok. She is a top 1% Etsy seller with a great story. And she's also on YouTube, by the way. So check out both. I'll link them in the description. The YouTube channel is new, so give her some subscriptions. Angel, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of learn more about what you've got going on Etsy. But I always like to start with letting people know kind of like how you got your start on Etsy, because people really like, I'm always wondering, like, how did you find Etsy and what did you start with selling and all that great stuff?
So back in 2000, at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I wanted to add just like a revenue stream to my family. I was a full-time teacher at the time. I also had a family, so I was super busy, but I didn't get paid a ton as a teacher. And so I just wanted to add a revenue stream. And so I decided, oh, I'm going to sell earrings on Etsy. That was what my big idea was. I was going to sell Kabashian earrings. And so I was actually just on YouTube looking around for ideas of different types of jewelry to sell on Etsy. And by the way, just to preface this, I had initially like kind of wanted to replace my income with Etsy, but then I read some like really discouraging stats about Etsy. Like 65% of Etsy sellers only make like less than $100 a year. And so that was like super discouraging. So I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, full time. It's just going to be a revenue stream for my family. So, and so then I started, looking around for ideas for jewelry. And I happened upon this idea of print on demand. And at first I was a little skeptical, just because I've always been a little skeptical of anything that's like making money online. It just always seems a little sketchy, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it just seemed like a little legitimate business, model. And so I experimented with it. And by the end of the year, I had revenued 6 figures in my shop. So that was like super huge for my family. It pretty much doubled our income. And it was just such a game changer.
That's amazing. Can I ask who you use to fulfill your orders? Because when I think of like $100 a year for most Etsy sellers, I'm like, most people probably couldn't handle if they had a higher order volume, right? Because a lot of people aren't thinking in that like scalable manner. So I'm assuming you outsource the fulfillment. Who'd you use?
Absolutely. I actually initially used Printful, and then I did switch to Printify just because for higher profit margins. If you're brand new, to be honest, Printful is still like a really good option. I think it's really beginner friendly for people, but now I do use Printify.
Yeah, I would agree there too.
Yeah, that scalable part is so important, because if I had tried to sell, like, for example, jewelry or make my own t-shirts, there's no way I could have ever scaled it. I would not have had time working full time with a family and a household to maintain. I would never have had time to scale, because I would have been responsible for printing and shipping those items. Whereas with print on demand, it's so scalable because someone else is doing all of that legwork for you.
Yeah. And you pay a little bit extra to them, but it's like, man, think about it. They have the whole infrastructure. A lot of times it's, spread around the world, like with Printful, for instance, and they have all their own, factories, employees. They try to keep everything in stock. Obviously, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer to me. Whenever I occasionally I'll happen like upon a TikTok of someone like making their own shirts. I'm just like, I just cringe. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to do that.
For real. Yeah. And you said do you want to go back and just kind of like share that really relatable part of your story? Because yeah, if you're fulfilling your own orders, you've got a family, you already know that, and I'm assuming so you don't work you told me before you are not working as a teacher anymore, but do you want to share that part as well?
Sure. So whenever I first started print on demand, I was working full time as a teacher. I even had my master's degree. I was like totally maxed out on the pay scale. I had like master's plus 15 credits. And I still, like, even with my husband and I's income, and even with trying to live, within our means, like, it was still like paycheck to paycheck, because teachers just don't get paid a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I had to look for another revenue stream. I didn't want to just add in get a second job with a family, because we had an 18-month-old at the time. And so what's really cool about this model is that I was able to just do it in pockets of my time, in the evening, on the weekend, during a lunch break, and it's totally doable. And Ryan, you even shared how that's how you got started. You were working full time. You had 2 jobs, right, when you first started?
I was teaching as well. Yeah.
Yes. I still do teach 1 night a week at a local college, but I'm actually resigning from that as well, just because it's in person, and so I don't want to have to do the commute. And to be honest, I just can make so much more money online than what a college is willing to pay me as an adjunct faculty.
I came to the same conclusion. So
yes.
Yeah, that's great though. Congrats on that. And it's like while I'm hearing you say that, I'm thinking what most people listening might ask who can relate to being in that part of the grind before you maybe step away from the job and have more freedom. And I guess you still have, you're raising your kids, but when you have time to sit down and work, how do you do it? Do you sit down and go like research, design, upload, and make one listing? Or is it like batches where it's like, I'm going to sit down, research, then I'm going to do design later, and then I'm going to upload later?
So I've done it both ways, and both ways has its advantages and disadvantages. Batching is definitely, to me, the most time efficient way to do it, because when you're constantly transitioning, you're losing time and mental energy with each task you're transitioning to. And so it is helpful to do the batching. However, you have to be really careful. So like if you do like 20 designs one day, and then the next day you're trying to find time to upload them and list them and get the SEO together. And some designs just end up sitting there and never get listed. And so you do have to kind of like just be careful and mindful of that, and figure out, which method is going to work best for you. You were just sharing about, the MyDesigns. Do you want to like share a little bit more about that? Because I am like so pumped. Like I'm totally going to be looking into this.
Yeah. It almost lends itself to what we're talking about, in that you can kind of sit down, you have an hour or whatever, you can gather designs or make your own designs, get them prepped, whether it's 5 designs, 10, it could be 120. If you're using the MyDesigns software, it's like the next step is, and like I said, it could be any amount. It could be 1, it could be up to 120. And you can do, the reason I say 120 is that's like the maximum for a batch, but then you can just upload them to a little, in the cloud folder. And so that's basically what I've been doing. Like over the weekend, I did a ton of new listings. Once they're in that software, number one, they're backed up, which I love, as an IT guy, you don't want to have one of something. They say one is none. So now they're backed up, and you can select all, generate all your mockups. And I was mentioning now they support uploading custom mockups. So I was telling you just recently, I had a bunch of custom mockups created with like the smart objects, so that the software will place my designs and then create those, JPEG mockups, which when I publish will get pushed to Etsy for me. So that's part of how I make it work for me. It's like, guys, everybody watching, what works for us may not work for you. And as long as you're pushing forward towards your goals, I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, there's definitely more than one way to skin a cat. I mean, there are just different approaches. Like even if you study your competitors on Etsy, you're going to see that some people have different pricing strategies, and that work for them. Some people have different thumbnail strategies. Some people have different basically marketing strategies and things like that, and it still works for them. So that's why it's so cool to have a variety of people that you can listen to and learn from, because you can just sort of grab golden nuggets from each person that's going to work for you and really help you to be successful on Etsy.
Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to ask you, because I kind of came to this realization, I split my Etsy shop with my girlfriend, Marielle, and she kept telling me to stop listing or stop optimizing for like the darker shirts. Cause like on Amazon, I sell the dark shirts all day. So I was like, all right, I'll just jump on over to Etsy, do the same thing. And she was like, no, you got to start optimizing for like the lighter color, like white, cream,
it's a different
like
aesthetic.
Natural. Yeah. What do you think? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I agree. It's a different aesthetic on Etsy. It definitely is. In fact, I had struggled a little bit going from Etsy to merch, because I did open up a merch account that I sell on, and I really struggled because it was so painful for me not to have my own mockups, and that my mockup had to look like everybody else's, and definitely the darker colors sell better. And so it was just, and so I don't know. I think it's in some ways it's harder to stand out on Amazon than Etsy because of that. I don't know. But if you started on Amazon and that's where you're from, like I can see how it seems harder on Etsy versus on Amazon to stand out.
They're different, different ecosystems. And yeah, it's like these different constraints. Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you, like, I think mainly if I had to guess, I think a lot of the people who watch my channel maybe relate more to like the Amazon merch, and they want to transition to other places. So anybody who's doing that, and really, I think a lot of people are on Etsy, but how can they position themselves for success? I mean, obviously, guys, go check out Angel's TikTok and YouTube, where you're sharing these tips all the time. But any like things that pop into mind that maybe are commonly missed that they can do?
Sure. What I really like about Etsy, and I'm sure that there's ways to do this on Amazon that you've taught on your channel too, is just there are like breadcrumbs that not Amazon, but Etsy leaves all over the place that helps you to understand what the customers want. And that's something that kind of like my unique approach that I teach my students is, how do you find out what the customers want? Don't worry about what I have to say. Don't worry about what other, another talking head has to say about, being successful on Etsy. What are the customers telling you? Because that can change, month to month. It can change overnight. We saw that with the pandemic, right? How the customers and their needs and what they want to change literally overnight. And what's nice about this business model is that we're poised to pivot tonight if we want to, and so it's such an exciting field to be in because it's considered fast fashion, where if you have a brick and mortar store, you have to start prepping 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years out, because that's what it's going to take for you to get one single product into a brick and mortar store like Target or Walmart. Whereas with us, if a politician goes on today and says something outlandish that it goes viral, we can make a t-shirt about it today. You can have it in front of millions of people today. And that's just like, that's like mind blowing. And it's just so exciting. And it's why I love being in this field, and why, so many people say, Etsy's oversaturated, Amazon's oversaturated. It's like, well, first of all, in some niches, it's not oversaturated. And new niches pop up all the time that didn't even exist last week, that you can jump in on. And so it's never going to be a problem, like, the oversaturated market kind of thing, especially if you're niching down.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And I think even if I had to compare like Etsy to Amazon, Etsy almost is like a better place to be, I think, in terms of like the saturation aspect, because Amazon for sure has their listings that are like, years old, 500 reviews. And it's like, and they're the ones soaking up like the major market share in the like huge niches, like Thanksgiving's coming up,
Right.
like there's going to be the Thanksgiving shirts from 5 years ago that are just crushing. That's going to be hard to overtake. But like on Etsy, there might be some new design style that's popular this year that you can go take something old, like in terms of like the sub niche, the text, whatever, put the new spin on it and make a lot of sales, make a killing. So
absolutely. And Etsy sort of gives new sellers or new listings an advantage, because they do temporarily put your new listing like higher in their rankings, because Etsy like wants you to be successful. They don't necessarily like provide an advantage over like experienced sellers rather than new sellers. You know what I mean? So like as a new seller, you still have just as much a chance of being seen as an established seller with, thousands more sales than you.
Definitely. And on that note, if you have like a bestseller, if you end up publishing a design and like I think on Etsy, it's like when you renew, right? Like you get a little bit of a boost too. So
yes.
I definitely remember like when I was first running my first print on demand Etsy shop, when I launched it, I think it was like late 2017 or maybe early 2018. And sometimes you publish a design and it's like insta sale, it's like the best feeling ever. What's your strategy when you find something that is a success? Like maybe, it's like a t-shirt design. Are you throwing it up on like other product types, for instance, after that, like anything like
Absolutely. I'll try throwing it on different colors, different products, whatever would make sense for that design, and then making new variations of that design. So to apply to like new niches, because, there's something about that design that, and, it could even be SEO combination of that, that customers are liking. And so it's important to like go, okay, this is selling really well for moms, and now I'm going to make this for dads. Now I'm going to make this for uncles. Now I'm going to make this for nurses or doctors, or teachers. So taking that one design and then scaling it out to other niches is really important too.
Yeah, I love that tip. That's great. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts, like any tips on tags? Because ever since, I don't know, I feel like my tags were kind of having Etsy waste my ad spend. That was something I kind of talked about a couple of weeks ago that I noticed when I started drilling into like, where's my money going with ads when it's not converting? And it would be like one little word, would be like, they'd run with that as if that was the niche. And it like was just very fringe related. So any tips with like Etsy tags?
So then, yeah, you're going to want to pay attention to your ads and make sure that if it is, that's happening with that listing, I would change the tag if you can. So that way it's not hitting that anymore. I rely more on SEO than I do my ads. My ads just sort of light the fire more so than like be the fire, which I'm sure you understand. So yeah, that's a little tricky. If honestly, I don't spend like a ton of time like trying to optimize that. I would rather just make a new listing that could sell more.
I agree there. I try to do the same thing. That's why I'm asking. I'm like, I've had to change my strategy basically, where I try to really reduce any keywords that are in there that may confuse the algorithm. Like for me, it was like a hat, and it was like, I said like flat bill, because some people type in flat bill, and it ran with the word bill, and so started advertising it to like Buffalo Bills fans, which then
Gotcha.
probably result in a IP infringement report. And I'm like, no, I'm not. It's a hat. It's a hat.
It's just a hat, I swear. No, that's important to be paying attention to, because whenever you do advertise on Etsy, and some people don't realize this, you will get some additional like information about like who they're showing your your listing to, and where you're getting a lot of clicks from. And if it's just wasting your ad spend, you need to either like just take off that listing from that ad spend, or go in and like manually change the SEO that it's picking up in a wrong way. There's just no other way to do it.
That's a great tip though. That like for sure is true. When I was like kind of auditing and like really taking a close look to kind of study almost how their algorithm works, on the tags that were like just the primary keywords, it was showing them with the wrong product type, which I mean, it's not going to lead to a conversion, but at least it was showing me like what people are interested in.
Sure.
And like it would be different product types. And I mean, a lot of them I don't have the ability to even sell with my fulfillment partners, but it still was like nice insights to know like, okay, this is something that if it was available, I would want to pivot to and make another listing or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like as far as, getting on Etsy, like having a best-selling listing, I'm going to guess, mockups are super important.
Yes.
SEO, you said, like, what else can people do to really get like get something that makes them feel successful on Etsy?
So just to keep in mind, and like once you like realize this, like it kind of helps you to understand how important that main listing thumbnail is. People are not buying your shirt. Okay. They're not buying your product. They're buying your photo. Okay. So you better have a pretty darn good photo. So that really is important. People are shopping with their eyes on Etsy. We've all had those customers who like never read the description, never read anything else. They're just buying that photo, buddy,
Yep.
So definitely just make sure you do have like really high quality mockups. I tried to use ones where people can kind of envision the product in their life. So I try not to have my mockups like zoomed out too much, but you want it to be close enough that you can clearly see the design. And our jobs as designers is to offer products that help people express themselves clearly. So I'm going to make sure that design is like bold and it's doing its job really well.
Couldn't agree more. I love that. That's great advice. And the benefit, like we said earlier on Etsy, is that you can control the that primary thumbnail.
Yes.
Unlike Amazon merch, where it has to be white background and they generate them for us. Even Seller Central, though, it's like you're almost hamstrung by the white background, which then leads probably to more people listing the black shirts. And then you get me basically, and I'm like, why aren't my designs selling on Etsy as well as they do on Amazon, and it's like I got a bunch of black shirts on the marketplace where I don't think it's necessarily conducive to having bestsellers.
Right.
So
yeah, definitely go in and always like study like shops that are like really crushing it, that have started crushing it like recently, like within the last year or two, because like that's going to really tell you so much about like what you need to know about like what's trending, what people are buying, what colors to use. Just that can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. So would you say like for in terms of what people can do that are watching this video, like maybe just literally go to Etsy, type in some generic search terms that are going to be high value, and just kind of like study not only maybe the listings, but maybe the seller too?
Yes. Yeah. That's a really big piece for people who are successful on Etsy. If they're being really successful, they're making multiple six figures on Etsy. It's because they're really good researchers, and then they're applying those the data that they're finding to their designs, to their thumbnails, to their listings, to their shops. And it's sort of there's a lot of pieces that are working together that if they figure out and they're really researching and applying that research, they're going to be really successful.
Absolutely. And it never hurts to go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, a lot of people who are brand new to Etsy and print on demand, I feel like so many of them like give up early on because they're like, they list 3 things and they're like, why did anyone buy my 3 things? And it's like, well, first of all, did you do any research? Did you do trend research? Did you do SEO research? Did you look for high competition, high searched, low competition keywords? Did you verify those results on Etsy? Did you study the trend styles? Did you study the colors that are selling? Did you do those things? And keeping in mind too, that, your first 6 months, in my opinion, on Etsy, I wouldn't be that worried about making tons of sales. Okay. I would be more interested in building my skill set. And doing that research so that you can then be successful on Etsy and any platform. If you can master Etsy, I mean, Etsy is considered the preschool of e-commerce. If you can master Etsy, you can take what you learn there and apply it to literally any platform. The basic concepts of that. So, I've been really successful on TikTok. I feel like one of the reasons why I was successful with growing an audience there is because I took what I learned on Etsy and I applied it to TikTok, So you can do it anywhere. So take the time to do that. Don't be discouraged if you're not getting sales and you're just starting out, because your job right now is to just be learning and building your skill set. There is a learning curve here. And once you get over it, you always have those skills. When in doubt, zoom out.
Yes. That's a great mantra there. I love that. I was just going to say, it doesn't hurt to, not only study the people who you don't know, just on their Etsy shops, their listings, but also like, people like you putting out great content for free on YouTube, on TikTok. I would just recommend, again, everybody watching, if what Angel's saying is resonating with you, to make sure show your support by following on those two platforms. And Angel, it's been great having you here. You've dropped a bunch of gems, like extremely valuable information. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Just get started. If you haven't opened your Etsy shop, get started, because in my opinion, everyone should have at least one passive income stream in their life. And like, Etsy is just such a great place to get started, because it's just, to me, it's a very beginner friendly platform.
Oh, that's awesome. And hey, when in doubt, zoom out. I'm going to remember that one. That's great. Angel, thanks for being here.